Hi, everybody. This is John Murphy at Murtech.com with your daily news update. Okay, here we are on May the 14th in the year of our Lord 2025. Got a lot of great information for you tonight. Let's go ahead and click over here, Murtech on Rumble. And right here, I don't know where my thumbnail went. There we go. Okay, let's close out the chat and slide down here and give a shout out to some people. Tabitha just started following my channel. J Yambrows just started following my channel. R Harmony just started following my channel. Howled 13 just started following my channel. And Skillip 1 just started following my channel. Sorry, folks, I'm trying to pronounce these the best I can. Thank you very much, folks, for following my channel. I greatly appreciate that. I hope you're tuned in tonight, and I hope you enjoy the content. Also, we have WBS and Birdie71 gave me a comment on my episode 1561, and Swamper Stomper gave me a comment on my episode 347B. So I want to go ahead and give these folks a thumbs up here, because I greatly appreciate your input in the comments and your support. So thank you very much. Let's give this a thumbs up. Boom. There it is. There it is. Okay, let's click the Show More button and expand the description box out. We have information from Devory Darkins, Doug in Exile, Dr. Steve Turley, and Megyn Kelly. So let's get started with this. I hope everything works out. Rumble's kind of acting a little bit weird here. Let me check something out here. Make sure yeah, there we are. Okay, I just want to check on my TV to make sure everything was still tuned in. All right, let's click over here. Okay, let me get this back to the beginning, give you a full screen on this, and see what he has to say.
Now, this is an interesting story. CNN is stunned after Jake Tapper delivers a shameless interview on Biden's mental decline, and President Trump celebrating 3 huge economic wins from this morning: the April inflation report, egg prices, and investments coming from Saudi Arabia.
But groceries, gasoline, energy, and all other prices are down with no inflation. We have no inflation in a few short weeks. We've created 464,000 brand new jobs. Think of that. It's almost 500,000 jobs created just in a matter of weeks. We just reached a historic trade agreement with the United Kingdom, and over the weekend we reached a breakthrough agreement with China. Both outstanding deals. China's agreed. We have to get it down. We have to get the little details down. And Scott, you're going to work on that very hard, but China's agreed to open up to the United States for trade and everything else. But they have to do it, so we'll see what happens.
So that's President Trump speaking in Riyadh at this moment. And there's 2 big economic wins for the president that we're going to talk about in this video. But let's first start with the huge announcement from the White House, which is $600 billion worth of investments from Saudi Arabia. They signed on the dotted line for $300 billion, but they're seeking to invest $600 billion. And President Trump actually wants to bump it up to $1 trillion. So no matter what the numbers are, the bottom line is Saudi Arabia is investing into our economy, and that is a huge win. And here's additional details from Fox News on this investment.
The president and Crown Prince signed an agreement of strategic economic partnership. I mean, this trip is not just about the optics. This is real business getting done. Saudi Arabia is committed to investing $600 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years, Senator.
Yes, $600 billion. The president thinks it will reach $1 trillion. But whether you're talking Saudi Arabia or Qatar or China or the UK, the point is this, to your previous point, these are countries that need our economy more than we need theirs. They're coming to the table. I just got off the phone with our trade rep, Jamison Greer, talking about Tennessee companies and how we position them so they can move forward and be a part of this golden age economy that President Trump is leading his team to establish for the United States.
Now, as we heard Fox News put it, this is great news, a huge economic win, no question about it, whether it's 600 billion or 300 billion or 1 trillion. Countries are investing into America. Now, that happens through multiple ways. One is we actually will sell arms packages, meaning weapons and ammunition to other countries for money. And sometimes that could be billions of dollars, millions of dollars, just depends on what it is. And also it's investing in companies here stateside. Now, let me show you how MSNBC is explaining what just happened. Take a listen.
The trip kicked off in grand style. Air Force One escorted into Riyadh by Saudi F-15s, then a lavender-colored carpet rolled out under the president's plane, his motorcade flanked by Arabian horses. All of it before he met with Saudi officials to nail down what the White House says is a $600 billion deal, though the Wall Street Journal points out not all of the agreements involved are binding. And a sign at today's event in Riyadh announced investments worth just about $300 billion, so half of what the White House claimed.
Now, let me just say this as I continue to talk about. Now, let me just say this before I get to the next economic win. You make up your own mind, right? I'm going to show you what both sides are saying. I'll show you what the numbers look like, but you decide. I'm of the opinion that both of these stories are huge economic wins for American citizens. However, when you listen to mainstream media, you got Fox News sounding positive about it, but then you have MSNBC downplaying it. So what are you supposed to believe? You think for yourself. That's my answer, okay? Now let's go to our next economic win, which is the inflation report for April. First, I'm going to show you when they talk about it in a positive way. Then I'm going to show you when they talk about it in a negative way. Let's start with Fox News. Take a listen.
Fox News alert, a key inflation report, the Consumer Price Index just released, showing that inflation rose 0.2% in April. That is slightly lower than what economists expected. That puts the 12-month inflation rate at 2.3%, which is the lowest increase since February of 2021.
All right, now let me just give you guys the bottom line and why this is great news. Number one, this is proving that inflation is not only slowing, but it's cooling off. Number two, it's heading in the direction that the Fed wants, which is inflation to be at 2% or lower, because in their eyes, that means it's a stable economy. And number three, it's the lowest since 2021. That's the bottom line, folks. But mainstream media just can't give it to Trump all the way. They always have to add something at the end where they give them the good news and then they say, but. Let me show you an example of that. Here's CNN doing just that.
Some potentially very welcome news for your wallet. U.S. inflation slowing, I should say, to its lowest rate in more than 4 years. That, according to April's Consumer Price Index report. It's an unexpected and very welcome development that's defying economists' expectations amid President Trump's ongoing trade war. Let's go live right now to CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich, who's watching all of this in New York. Vanessa, walk us through this morning's report. Where do things stand?
Encouraging signs, Wolf. Inflation continuing to move in the right direction, cooling on an annual basis to 2.3%. Also on a monthly basis, ticking up slightly, but not too uncomfortable, up 0.2%. That's different than what we saw, however, in March, when we saw inflation on a monthly basis cooling down 0.1%. But I say all of this with a huge asterisk. That is because this report likely doesn't capture the full impact of President Trump's tariffs just yet.
See, that's exactly the way mainstream media works. Even though the April inflation report is lower than the March inflation report, they claim that it's misleading because it's not factoring President Trump's tariffs. Now, I'm going to give you what I think about that, but let me show you one more clip. This is from MSNBC. Pay attention to the way that she describes this April inflation report. Take a listen.
Breaking economic news this morning. New data on how President Trump's tariffs may be impacting inflation. U.S. inflation coming in at 2.3% for the month of April. That's year to year. Slightly higher than last month, roughly in line with expectations.
So according to MSNBC, inflation is actually going up. That's number one. Number two, this entire report is about President Trump's tariffs and how they impact the economy, it has nothing to do with jobs. It has nothing to do with how the economy is overall doing. It has nothing to do with the overall trends. That's how ridiculous they can be, ladies and gentlemen. And my question is this: if inflation doesn't skyrocket next month, as it have you believe due to President Trump's tariffs, what will they say then? That's my question. Now, here's some more good news, and I'm purposely choosing NPR just to show you how bad the media can be, okay? This whole article says inflation cools in April, but tariffs could upend the picture in coming months. You know what the good news they put all the way at the very end is this: inflation was kept in check last month by a decline in both gasoline and grocery prices. Listen here, egg prices, which have been a poster child for the high cost of living, plunged 12.7% in April as farmers got a seasonal reprieve from a lengthy battle with avian flu. Egg prices are still 49.3% higher than they were a year ago. So again, I guess you'll have to make up your mind on whether or not you believe this is great news or bad news.
Yeah, the smoke was much.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here and say this about that. Now, last month we had Easter. Okay? So, and I've seen signs in stores talking about how Easter may affect the egg prices because, as we all know, Easter eggs. But it seems even with Easter and the demand on eggs being higher than what it normally is throughout the year, the price of eggs went down 12%. Isn't that amazing?
Worse than the fire. I think we were all expecting a jump in inflation. A big part of that was the drop in gasoline prices. This is very significant for households. That's one of the biggest expenses we have on a week-to-week basis. That drop in gasoline and energy prices, a big deal in keeping inflation in check. And it is in the sweet spot right now, between 2 and 2.5%. This is just where the Federal Reserve likes it. This economy right now seems like it's going to be all right when we have that tariff pause right now. We'll see how things play out over the next 90 days with some of those other tariffs coming into play in the next few weeks. But right now, this is kind of a sweet spot for inflation.
Now, the next breaking story from this morning is Jake Tapper on CNN has just delivered a shameless interview. He is looking to make money off exposing the former president, Joe Biden, since all Democrats are doing it at this point. And I actually want to respond to what he had to say. Take a listen.
This is all part of a larger whole where the Biden White House tried to hide the extent of his deterioration, both physical and cognitive, as much as possible. In fact, as we all know, we all saw, as his shuffling gait got worse and worse from 2003 to 2004, they started putting aides around him as he walked to Marine One, the helicopter that was to kind of hide from public view how bad his gait was, how bad his walking was, his shuffling, and also in case he stumbled again to make sure somebody was there. And this is just of a piece of an overall campaign to try to conceal from the American people the extent to which the president was really struggling to do his job.
You have an entire White House press corps, though, following him around. And I'm just curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
Well, Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other reporters, trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten.
Okay, so let me just say this really quick. God has a plan, which is why we do this show every single day. People like me exist because of people like Jake Tapper. I love what I do. I'm very blessed, but I believe every day I sit down and do this show is because I'm giving a voice to the silent majority. Now, you guys can make up your own mind on what you want to believe to be true or false, but the bottom line is this. People like Jake Tapper is why people like me exist. They failed to do the right thing when it mattered most in the name of journalism. That's what it's all about. They should have been questioning the president every step of the way. They refused to do so. And now they not only failed to do that, but they want to make money off exposing that they did not do that. And then they flip it by saying, well, you know, we only started investigating this after the election. Give me a break.
And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024. And we spoke with more than 200 people, most of whom, almost all of whom, were Democrats, and almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after Election Day.
And let me add this as well, because I know this will be a pushback from Democrats. They'll claim that there's just too many people for it to have been a scandal. We didn't collude with each other in regards to Joe Biden's mental decline. There's one thing you guys all have in common is you hate President Trump more than you love American citizens. And when you're in that emotional space in that way, and everybody's like that in the liberal world, especially mainstream media, academia, Hollywood, they don't have to do much to collude. They just all agree with each other. Now, the interesting thing about Jake Tapper's interview was the way that it was presented.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause this here. He goes on and talks more about that. But I'm like 12 and a half minutes into this. There's like 7 minutes more to go in this video. I'm going to move on. This does come from Devory Darkins. I am subscribed to his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's get back here and take a look at Doug in Exile. Whoopi is off. The View is out of her expertise as host realize prescriptions are coming down. Yeah, I mentioned when he signed this executive order, I was wondering how long it would be before the mainstream media, deep state, would have something negative to say about this. Well, I guess it only took about a day and a half. Let's see what Doug in Exile has to say. Uh-oh.
With skin cancer, saying Whoopi is out of her mind would imply that she has a mind. Look, I got in a fist fight with skin cancer. I think we won. Welcome to Doug in Exile. As we check out Whoopi Goldberg dogging Trump, she has Trump derangement syndrome. We're not sure if it's purely a mental disorder or if it has a genetic component.
So yesterday, you know who issued an executive order aimed at lowering drug costs.
Terrible, right? Trump's a jerk. He's lowering drug costs, right, Whoopi? What's wrong with you people? People are suffering. She has no sympathy.
You don't know which drugs, but lowering drugs. And he
they're all bad now.
Countries for extorting drug companies by negotiating lower prices that stick the U.S. with the bill.
Did you write that all by yourself, Whoopi? Look at that face. She looks like a Klingon. You boys get off my lawn. She's all doing these economic theories using Boolean logic. Using the Bézier curve, we found that Trump's economic policy has been joking out big pharmaceuticals.
And none of that made any sense. But here's who he said inspired him to take action.
A friend of mine who's seriously overweight, a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, and he takes the fat shot drug. And he called a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman.
Look at RFK Jr. to his right, laughing. The fat shot. He's all,
I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said, I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on?
Again, he didn't specify which drugs he's going to target or which insurance programs would be impacted. Because you see, if you're going to lower the price of the drugs, you got to first fix the broken insurance company. Because it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the audience is applauding. They don't understand either. Yeah, Whoopi, tell us all about insurance policies' relation to drug costs. She's on Ozempic, by the way, but she's a multi-millionaire. It doesn't matter to her what it costs. She has no sympathy for you. Average The View viewer does not have as much money as she does. No one who has more money than Whoopi would ever watch her show.
So
I would think they would have to take money out of politics too, because a lot of these guys in Congress, don't they take money from pharmaceuticals?
Yeah.
Well, you just look who just arrived, Joy Behar. Do you think some people in Congress take money from pharmaceuticals? By the way, mostly Democrats, plenty of Republicans, though. In fact, if you watch The View, it will be all pharmaceutical ads.
And the best layperson way I could explain this is when you go to the grocery store and they're like, we'll match the lowest price somewhere else. He's basically matching lower drug costs in other nations. Now, he's had some interesting support from this. Ro Khanna, a member of the Progressive Caucus, and Bernie Sanders have a bill that basically does this. The main part of—
Thanks, Trump, for doing what their bill now proposes. Now that they're copying you on this and copying you on lower taxes, they're going to somehow copy you, and the Democrats will be against it at the same time. But they like it when Bernie Sanders does it. Bernie Sanders, by the way, who's taken a ton of money from pharmaceuticals.
The main critique of it is it could help research and development. America's the hub of medical research and development.
Well, we were.
And
until got in and cut all of this out.
Well, and another thing is he is saying there's going to be enforcement action if they don't lower drug price, which that to me is price controls and veers into some socialism. I'm not comfortable.
But here's the problem: when we talked about this, we've talked about lowering drug costs. We say people pay more tax in different countries, because it helps them with their costs. Now, when we suggested that, they said, "Oh, this is socialism." It's not socialism. Yeah. It's best for the country if everyone can afford their health care.
That was the easy applaud line, too. If everyone can afford their health care. I wonder what president came up with the Affordable Care Act that jacked all of our health care through the roof. Remember, they promised it would be affordable health care. The Affordable Health Care Act, they called it that because it's a lie. It made things much more expensive. Because basically, when the government says we will guarantee doctors and medical insurance for every single person, all that happens is the medical community just raises their prices and goes, woohoo, free money. Same thing with free student loans. All the colleges do is they jack the prices of their colleges up by the same amount of money and go, woo, free money. It doesn't get to the consumer. The consumer pays more for their artificially jacked up college prices that are subsidized by the government. Now they pay for their overpriced medical stuff subsidized by the government.
It was just an executive order.
That was my problem.
This is just to distract from the fact that he's getting this $400 million plane from Qatar.
Yeah.
It's like, don't look at
He's been working on reducing prescription drugs long before he got the free plane from Qatar, which is worth almost nothing compared to what we're talking about when it comes to prescription drug prices. Joy Behar. Thanks for writing another joke. I like Joy Behar. She's like 80 years old, so like all her jokes are from like the vaudeville era, the silent movie era.
Again, don't look at this. Look at this.
I think it's an interesting
He tries to fool Americans.
What was it like when Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton took you to lunch, Joy Behar?
You have to actually have a plan.
And Ro Khanna has a bill.
Whoopi Goldberg there, guys. You actually have to have a plan. That's her brilliant commentary. Thank you. Did you go to college for that? You have to actually have a plan. It's like it's saying nothing. Elisa Farrah Griffin on the Biden interview fiasco that happened on their show that everyone says the Bidens regret going on.
He acknowledged a couple things that he hadn't said before, and I felt like made some.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in here before he moves on to this. Now, I believe that the executive order that he signed said that the pharmaceutical companies could not charge any more in the United States than what they charge to the lowest price that they have overseas or in other countries. Now, he also made the statements, this will probably make the price of their products rise in other countries so they can kind of even it out and still do their development and research, okay? So Whoopi's saying, okay, well, the United States should pay for all the research. I don't understand that. I mean, she just has to badmouth Donald Trump. She can't give him any credit at all for anything. None of the Democrats can. You heard Doug. He said that himself. They'll lambast Trump for what he does and then turn around and put a bill in to Congress to, well, let's do this. Unfreaking believe. What liars. What shams. anyone that is a Democrat should be embarrassed for the people that they have voted in, the way they act, the way they talk, the way they lie to us, the way they steal from us. If Republicans were to do that, I would be embarrassed. I'll tell you, I was embarrassed with George Bush Jr. and George Bush Sr. I was. Now, George Bush Jr., even though I was embarrassed at him, I know he was a hell of a lot better than what Gore would have been or what Kerry would have been, because we would all be cooking on, I don't know, steam, I guess, from a fire that we had to build to chop our furniture up because they wanted to shut down all the coal plants and all the petroleum in the world. So I just had to get that out.
News. I asked him the question about if he takes any responsibility for the fact that Trump won.
Yeah,
and he said, I take responsibility. And both Sarah and I were talking off air. We're like, that hit us because it's been a long time since I feel like I've heard a politician say, I take responsibility.
Yeah, the buck stops here kind of thing.
Like that used to be sort of the rule of the road. So I thought that was powerful and poignant. I felt like he's also been really self-reflective in sort of this post-presidential period, because he mentioned when he talked about, the factors and reasons in which the Democrats lost, Kamala Harris lost to President Trump. He mentioned a lot of sort of strong feelings that people have coming out of COVID. And it was the first time I heard him say that, and it's something that I hear constantly. And he also talked about how a lot of incumbents lost around the world. And I think that there is still like some sort of collective trauma people are unpacking from COVID. They're still wrestling with decisions that governments made. They're still feel like there are things that they feel like a lot felt so unfair from that period. And I thought that was interesting that he kind of came to that conclusion too, that
when your government comes in with those draconian, manipulative, often harmful, around the world, people said, stop doing this, government. We'll handle this. This is not your job. I'm happy that Biden uses it as an excuse now only because he lost. Of course, if he won, he'd go, our policies were so great on COVID that's why the people rewarded me with the presidency. I do like that he took responsibility for losing because he never should have run. I hope in hindsight they figured that out. There were probably a couple of Democrats that possibly could have beaten Trump, some real outside voices. When God chooses our leaders, the Bible says, I'm thankful that Biden had such a giant ego and was so selfish and so proud that he went ahead and said, I've got a chance. And then he lost and was embarrassed. Hope you guys will subscribe if you like this content, and we'll keep bringing you guys 4 videos a day. I'm here to work hard for you, even though I'm recovering from my surgery quite well, partially at least, thanks to your prayers. I'm Doug.
Okay, Doug, thank you very much. As you can see, this does come from Doug in Exile. I am subscribed to his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's get back here to our layout. Dr. Steve Turley, Trump just set a stunning new polling record as Dems collapse. Well, that sounds interesting. Let's see what that's all about.
In each capsule.
All right, let me get past this.
A hero's welcome in Riyadh. Here at home, something even more monumental appears to be happening. And for this, we owe a debt of thanks to our good friend Mark Mitchell of Rasmussen, who's been on our show several times. Mark was one of the top pollsters of 2024. He, along with our other good friend Rich Barris, were awarded the top most accurate pollsters for the November election. And Mark is turning heads once again. Take a look at this. The number of American likely voters who believe the country's on the right track has just hit a 20-year high. It's a record 49%. Now, Rasmussen has been daily tracking right track, wrong track polling now for 2 decades. They have tons of data on this. Again, going back to 2004, at the end of George W. Bush's first term. And Mark is saying that we've simply never seen numbers like this for right track. And it's been progressively moving upwards now ever since Trump took office. So we first saw signs of this back in February when Mark posted it for the first time in over 20 years of polling. Right direction exceeded wrong direction in their daily polling. So we saw this general optimism shaping up among the electorate quite early on with Trump 2.0. And then in March, just a few weeks later, after Trump gave his epic speech before the joint session of Congress, a CBS poll taken immediately after posted just incredible numbers. 77% of voters supported Trump's plan to cut government waste, fraud, and abuse. 77% backed his immigration and border policies. 73% supported his stance on Russia and Ukraine. 68% said it made them feel hopeful and proud, the speech did. 68% said Trump had a clear plan to tackle inflation. 68% said he accurately described America's crime crisis. 63% said he focused on issues that they care about. And then again, just a few weeks later, a few weeks after that, Mark found that right track polling surged even higher. Again, Trump was already at the highest right track polling of any president in 20 years, but now that number went up to 46%. And then, as of yesterday, it smashed all previous records by reaching 49%. And chances are it's just going to continue to go up and up and up as more and more of these trade deals come in, as the stock market continues to correct and surge like it did yesterday, gaining over 1,200 points, as the tax cuts become permanent, as revenue continues to pour into our country. I mean, you may have seen this. This is crazy. Reuters is reporting that the U.S. budget surplus has just surged to $258 billion in April. By the way, you heard me say that right. A budget surplus of nearly $260 billion in April alone. And it's largely because of the tariffs. The federal treasury collected over $500 million in imports duties in the month of April alone. Again, this is just after the first 100 days in office. It's been absolutely historic. And of course, all the legacy media has done in the process is just try to pee on the parade, as it were. I guess I should say rain on the parade, but all they've been doing is putting all of their time and energy in producing these absurd polls, these blatantly fabricated frauds, claiming that Trump is in a polling freefall, the worst polling we've ever seen in a century. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have Trump in a polling freefall all at the same time. Right track numbers hit their highest point in 20 years. It's a contradiction in terms, and somebody is clearly wrong. Somebody, I'm just going to be blunt, somebody is clearly lying.
Well, I'll tell you what it is. I mean, these Democrats think that the country's going in the right direction when you have senators and representatives flying down to El Salvador to try to get released a gang member so that they can bring this gang member, this human trafficker, this wife beater back to the United States. Yeah, that's what the Democrats are thinking. Yes, the country is finally going in the right direction, that we are actually going overseas to bring back terrorists, gang members, wife beaters, human traffickers. Yes, the country is finally going in the right direction. That's what the Democrats, that's why these numbers are so high. Okay, because all the Democrats are excited about representatives from the House and Democrat mayors busting into ICE facilities and just barging their way through. Yes, that is exactly what the Democrats need to do to make this country go in the right direction. Can you believe it? And then the mainstream lying legacy media comes up with this stuff, these lies. That's why I put this information out, folks, so that you can get no nonsense, common sense, logic, and truth.
Well, I think we can guess who that is. Victor Davis Hanson actually did a really good video just the other day on how all of these other so-called pollsters, so Morning Consult, which our friends, our polling friends like to call Morning Compost, NPR, Washington Post, ABC, Morris, Quinnipiac, They're wrong literally all the time. Don't take my word for it. Go to Real Clear Politics and see how they were scoring or how they were polling the election. They were wrong literally all the time and time again. They consistently had Kamala up 2, 3, 4, 5 points above Trump. We now know, based on her own internal polling, her own people admitted this shortly after the election. We now know they knew they were never ahead in the polling. They knew that. And there were clear indicators of that when they were panicking with the Senate elections, and particularly in Wisconsin. There was a clear panic there, suggesting that they knew internally in their polling, which they paid top dollar for, that they were never ahead. So all of these polling outlets just lie to us. Again, they're not just wrong, they're colossally wrong. And they're always wrong in favor of the Democrat. That's not coincidence. They're off by 4, 5, 6 points, particularly NPR, which was just defunded, thank God, by the Trump administration. They had Kamala winning by like 5 points the day before the election. Did they ever apologize? Did they ever admit their mistakes? Of course not. Of course not, precisely because they're doing their jobs. Their jobs are not to measure public sentiment. Their jobs are to try to manipulate it. They're not pollsters, they're propagandists. And so that's why we, on this channel, we rely on Mark and Rasmussen and Rich Barris, the Public Polling Project, the single most accurate pollster of all of them, 2024, Trafalgar of Atlas Intel. We rely on Quantum Insights. They are all real pollsters. They're obsessed with accuracy. They're absolutely committed to gauging and measuring public sentiment with pinpoint precision, and they've been very successful at it. And they're the only pollsters we take seriously on this channel because they're the only pollsters. Everybody else are propagandists. And the irony is that all of the fraud pollsters, the propagandists out there, they dismiss Rich and Mark and Quantum Insights and Atlas Intel and Trafalgar. They dismiss them as being too right-wing. I mean, you literally can't make this stuff up. The polling industry, or as many affectionately refer to it as the polling mafia, they deliberately disparage the single most accurate pollsters precisely because the results are so favorable to Trump, which goes against the whole ethos of the liberal legacy media polling industry, which is dedicated to hurting Trump, not helping him. So damn be accuracy. Again, they're not pollsters, they're propagandists. That said, clearly no amount of legacy media propaganda is hurting Trump, not at least when we look at these right track polling numbers. And of course, Rasmussen has Trump over 50% approval, which would be consistent with that. But also, conversely, no amount of legacy media propaganda appears to be helping the Democrats. No matter what they do, the Democrats continue to flail. Democrat pollster Mark Penn, who's been very critical of his party, he's basically admitting that his party's lost in the wilderness at this point. I mean, they're leaderless. They're just caught in this 80-20 doom loop that we talk often about on this channel, where they side with the most extreme left of their party, which in turn alienates them from the 80% majority, supermajority on virtually every major political issue. Just think of that CBS poll after Trump's speech before the joint session of Congress, right? You think about it from border security to mass deportations to migration to taxes to tariffs and the relation to manufacturing and protection of American industry, to all the various woke issues from trans athletes in women's sports to CRT in the classroom. On virtually every major political issue, the Democrats have planted their flags on the side of the most extreme left. And Democrat pollsters like Mark Penn don't see a way out of that. Again, like you said, they're just lost in the wilderness at this point. And to make matters even worse, the New Republic is reporting on the left's age problem, the geriatric problem, which, again, we have been talking on this channel now. We've been talking about this for over 8 years. And the legacy media is just starting to catch on to this. The Democrats are losing voters left and right. They're losing men. They're losing whites. They're losing Latinos. They're losing married women. They're losing black men. And most especially, they're losing voters under the age of 30, the so-called young voter, youth vote. Young voters are now solidly in the Trump camp, giving him some of his highest approval numbers of among any other age cohort. The only group that Democrats have left besides single women, who are a shrinking demographic, the only group Democrats have left are geriatric voters, senior citizens, again, who inordinately are opposed to Trump. And that's because they're the most likely to want to stick with the status quo, right? So older voters are more prone to want to stick with establishment politics, to stick with what they've grown up with since World War II. Everyone else, literally everyone else, every other demographic cohort wants an end to the status quo, most particularly young voters. And that's exactly what Trump and the populist right in general, for example, throughout Europe is giving them. And so bottom line, the Democrats are toast. I mean, just demographically, they're toast. They're losing voters by defection. And as it turns out, not to be too morbid here, but they're losing voters by death. It's defection and death. The geriatric base is by definition futile. It's inherently futile. It's by definition temporary. And so while Trump is busy getting a hero's welcome abroad and setting records here at home, the Democrats are imploding. Their policies are more unpopular than ever. All the while, their constituents are rapidly dwindling, all but guaranteeing their eventual and inevitable demise.
All right, folks, there you have it. Great information from Dr. Steve. I always like to share his stuff because he always definitely goes into detail explaining the information that he provides. Let me click on this Rumble link and show you that this video does come from Dr. Steve Turley. I'm following his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. Okay, let's jump back here to our main page. And we have going to wrap this up with some information from Megyn Kelly. The lying corporate media never says sorry for getting major stories wrong on purpose. I wonder why. Let's take a listen and see what she has to say.
There's a reason CNN specifically is a giant dumpster fire. It has no credibility anymore because Jeff Zucker allowed it to turn itself into, and it's not just him, but that was a big part of it, into an anti-Trump battleship. And guess what happens? If you lose, your battleship gets sunk. And that's where CNN is. No one should believe that this is an honest network that's trying to provide facts to the public. That's an absurdity. They let a president with dementia go unchallenged for years. In fact, I'm sure you'll play it, the only clip of Tapper that anyone's seen about this is him actually challenging Laura Trump when she brings up Biden's cognitive decline. He's like, how dare you? Are you a psychiatrist? No, Jake, we're not all morons. We can see and hear and have for years that this guy is a puppet and the people around him are all playing a game. This is a sea change moment in the public's understanding of journalism, of the media, of who is honest, and we should not let this go. By the way, I totally agree with you on COVID too. It's the same thing. They went from being the little like commissars of COVID enforcement in the media to, oh, but Big Bad Fauci told me that this was true. Somehow I was not fooled by any of that. Somehow I knew that all this was crap and that it came from a lab and that masks are a joke and that lockdowns are moronic. But I'm supposed to, why is it that these people, I went on Bill Maher's show back in October, and I appreciate some of Bill's, more recent commentary on these subjects, because I think at some level he just realizes the Democrat Party's just gone insane. And he says
no, but he thinks the Republicans are worse. You know that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I always say this. He's right on about 40% of things these days. I'd say about 40% he gets it, about 60%
He's
he's still
non-woke.
living.
And so on any woke issue, he's correct. But he definitely suffers from TDS. I mean, I
But
like
he
Bill,
knows-
but he's
well,
got the TDS.
This is the one moment where we really had a sort of at cross purposes or at just, I said, he's really not a fascist, Bill, right? Like, it's going to be fine. The country, he goes, no, I don't know that. I was like, dude, come on, you're a smart guy. Get a grip. Anyway, but I remember when I went on that show, we're talking about this, it was still considered some kind of right-wing talking point to say that the Democrats had tried to essentially swindle the American people by leaving Joe Biden in as long as they did. And the thing is, everyone can kind of figure this out. You leave Joe Biden in, and then, oh my gosh, he debated. Now we can't continue the lie anymore. You go with Kamala. Why didn't they put Kamala in before? Because they knew that she was a disaster. She was a train wreck without dementia. It all played out exactly as it should have under the circumstances. And this is just for me now to look back on this. No, here's the thing. Does anyone say I'm sorry to their audience? Does anyone ever go and say,
God, no.
Hey,
Look at Rachel
I missed-
Maddow after Russiagate fell apart. Did she come out and say, I got it completely wrong, I misled you for 2 years? No, she just rode that into a $30 million a year contract for 1 day a week. And she's still the leftist goddess and revered for her fact-based reporting.
So I agree with you. I would add to this, though, that in the case of Maddow, the Russia collusion thing, while not entirely successful for the left, it slowed him down in the first administration. It was like an obstruction tactic. So the fact that they were lying about that to their audience, I'm talking about if you're an MSNBC watcher, it's tell me more about Russia. Talk about how Trump and Putin were like, taking Turkish baths together. Like, make up whatever you want. As long as it's hurting Trump, I'm in. The problem they have in this case, in this story, is Joe Biden's fine. They're lying to you. He doesn't have dementia. Joe Biden's fine. Oh, Hitler just won the election. And now we're going to tell you that we were lying to you about the dementia the whole time. They have made a mockery of their own audience and they failed. Do you see what I mean? Like, that's there was no upside to this. This was a catastrophe politically for them. They're fine with lying, but if you lie and you lose, now people who watch Maddow at home, well, that's a whole other kind of like who's watching Maddow at home, but people who are watching these individuals, they need to have a reckoning. The reckoning needs to happen, and I don't know if it will.
There are real consequences to those lies. Well, I'm shocked, I have to say, that it's like, I guess I'm not shocked. I mean, I'm not shocked he was about to go into a wheelchair. He looked like he was about to go into a casket. That's the truth. But it is interesting to read these people coming out with the progressive levels of how bad it was. And the more I read, the more I just think what I've been thinking, which is F these people. They should never be trusted again. There needs to be a federal investigation into how bad he was, whether he was competent while in the office and making the decisions and signing the executive orders and, the pardons. Who was making the calls? We still don't know. We need subpoena power over his top aides who need to be forced under oath to tell us who was governing the country. That hasn't happened so far, and it needs to. Okay, I want to keep going because we don't have that much time.
Can I just say one quick thing? It's just that
Quickly.
I think Jill Biden is going to emerge as one of the big villains in all this. Jill Biden should have pulled her husband out of this. Anyway.
And she's a doctor. She should know better. This July, there's a global summit of BRICS nations in Rio de Janeiro. The bloc.
All right, I'm going to pause this here. Let me click on this Rumble link. Boom. And show you that this video does come from Megyn Kelly. I'm following her channel. I've given her a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's get back here. And let me explain to you that these videos that I shared with you today come directly from the producers' channels. These videos belong to them. I don't get any commissions or royalties for sharing this information out, but I do get the satisfaction of giving this information to you so that hopefully you can pass this on to others. Now, I've got a little time left here, And I know I didn't have Wendy Bell on the agenda for today, but I did drop a extra of hers. In fact, I dropped 4 extras today. This is extra 347D. I normally go to C. She had some really great stuff. I'm going to go ahead and play this for you because, as I said, she had some really great stuff. Let me get it up to the video for you.
Haters, if you will, which is crazy.
All right.
We're kind of given a choice.
Let me move it back.
Things East. We're so hopeful. It was so powerful. And the joy and the energy the people of the Middle East are experiencing. Because Donald Trump is saying, look, we're making some changes. It's going to be brilliant in the United States. I want you to come along. There's no reason why you can't enjoy it too. There's no reason why we can't work together and make beautiful things as partners together. And it's really come down to this, I think. People in this country who have been anti-Trumpers, never Trumpers, MAGA haters, if you will, which is crazy, are kind of given a choice. You're either going to continue on the path that you're on that is a dead end, that is angry, that is obstreperous, it's meant to be slow and laborious. You can be on that side. You can be angry. You can protest. You can believe what they tell you in the fake news. Or you can put all that on pause and say, you know what? I'm gonna watch for a while. I'm going to see what this president does. I'm going to see where he travels. I'm going to listen directly to him. And I'm going to hear what he says. And I'm going to watch the ripple effect of his words spread across the planet. It sounds dramatic. It is dramatic. It's giant. You guys, it was 4 months ago. It was 5 months ago. You know, we were sitting here going, oh my gosh, the trajectory of this country can go one of two ways, right? We go in the path of the globalists, of the neocons, of the people who fly around in their private jets and finger wag you and tell you how to live your life and tell you what you should and should not do. And they wrap it in some stupid bubble of do-goodery, which we all know is farcical. Save the planet. Do your part. How about you just go be the most wonderful you can be? Right? And how about the government gets the hell out of your way while you're so doing? This decision is upon us. And if you're listening to my voice and you're saying to yourself, I really don't like this guy. I don't like Trump. I don't like his personality. I don't like how he talks. I don't like his hair. I don't like whatever. You do you. But I got to tell you, you're going to see some hints here of a fissure in the foundation of the never Trump empire. It's happening. I'm going to read you a headline. Okay? Here we go. Trump's egg price fiction has suddenly become reality. This is going to be so hard for CNN. CNN's putting it out because all they've been saying is eggs. Oh my gosh, eggs are so expensive. And all of a sudden now they're saying, well, actually, there's been a cataclysmic collapse in the price of eggs, down 60 cents a dozen in a week. Okay, CNN, welcome to the party. Are you ready to pay attention? You ready to dance? How about this headline? A federal grand jury yesterday decided to dig into, and you've got to love this, and indict that Milwaukee judge, remember her, Hannah Dugan, who decided to give a criminal illegal alien a backdoor escape from her courtroom because she was tipped off by the guy's lawyer that ICE agents were basically waiting to arrest the guy in the courtroom. And so she Scoobied him out the back door. Yeah, well, a federal grand jury in Milwaukee says, I don't think so. We have rules. That's pushback, ladies and gentlemen. That is significant. Did you hear about Harvard? Harvard is FAFOing their way into complete bankruptcy. Donald Trump pulling back another $450 million in grants because Harvard won't do what he's asking everybody to do. get in line, do what he says, watch what happens, and then decide. Do you like where you are, or do you wish you could go back? This is the conundrum facing Democrats today. You've got 90% of Republicans who are completely on board what this president is doing, completely on board with it. You've got, I would say, 30% of Democrats who are like, I don't want to say anything, but I kind of like this. Things are happening. We've got what? In Turkey, we're going to have some meeting with Zelensky and Putin, possibly. We've got Pakistan and India. They're dealing with some stuff. We've got the Houthis that Trump bombarded with more than 1,000 missiles. Yeah. And they're like, whoa, we're done. Okay, we're done firing on your ships. Thank you very much. We've got trade deals going. We've got the UK lined up. We've got Canada and Mexico securing the border and saying, you know what, we're with you. China is saying about fentanyl, we can work with you on that. And by the way, your tariffs, we understand. Let's deal. You've got all these other countries coming to the table. You've got the gold card rolling out, $5 million a pop, right? You've got now in the news all of this stuff about detention facilities from Alcatraz to Rikers Island now. Why ever would that be? 2 legit island penitentiaries, right? For criminal illegal aliens. The law and order is back. The economy is booming. We've got a $600 billion deal with Saudi Arabia yesterday. And that's not even the most important part of what happened yesterday, because what it was the return of America on the world stage with the respect, with the awe, with the gratitude of another country, as it should be. For Crown Prince Mohammed to meet Donald Trump at the foot of Air Force One, at the very bottom of the steps, Joe Biden couldn't navigate because breaking news, this just in, he was really shot. No kidding. The press are now telling us, well, you know, Joe Biden, in fact, his doctors are saying if he had had one more fall, they were going to put him in a wheelchair for the rest of his presidency. What? It's almost like you didn't know that. Mohammed meets President Trump at the base of the steps with an aura of awe. You've ever watched a little kid see their hero, whether it be a firefighter or a police officer or a member of the military in uniform or a football player, or what have you ever watched? Awe. That is what I saw yesterday, all day in Saudi Arabia. And this trip that the president is on is so much more than talking about peace. It's so much more than saying, hey, you've got stuff that we need. We've got military defense stuff that you need. Let's work it out. Let's be even stronger. Donald Trump did something amazing. He offered an olive branch to Iran. He said, look, we're willing to clean the slate like an Etch-a-Sketch. I'm willing to shake the Etch-a-Sketch, and you can create your own design. But the window to deal is now. It is brief, and it will close. So if you want to deal and you want to get along with everybody else, Iran, now's the time to pick up the phone. And to Syria, Trump taking away sanctions against Syria to open the door of communication with a new government. Ladies and gentlemen, the golden age is not just here on this continent. What's coming, if what he says is true, wow. Democrats, how do you like it now?
All right, let's get back here to the main page. I hope you enjoyed that. that information from Wendy Bell. It's great stuff. Okay, I was able to get that extra in there for you. And we're just about wrapped up on time. I will provide a daily news wrap-up. I've got about 70 videos in my playlist just waiting for you. I'm going to go back and update that again with some more recent information if it comes in, and give you a full rundown of what's been going on today. So I do want to thank you for your time spending it here with me this evening. Hopefully, I'll get to see you again later, and may God bless.
If you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news stories and commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social posts, then get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard. Join the movement. Join Truth Social. Go to truthsocial.com/@moretech.